once you start moving and walking in a direction, the universe, I believe, opens up pathways for you. So just take that first step. I don't think about a safety net being below there. I think of walking on a high wire with no net below. Because if you kind of think about having a safety net there, you're not really fully committing yourself. And if you're not fully committing, you're not giving yourself the best opportunity. Like sometimes you have to, figuratively step out of yourself to almost watch yourself in like you're in a movie and be like, hey, is this the hero that I want to follow? Growing up in Oakville, a relatively small town at that time, going off to school in California wasn't something a lot of people did. But that door opened, and as scary as it was, I just walked through it. And that's sort of the way I navigated my life. When opportunities came up, if it was something in a direction I wanted to go or something that piqued my curiosity, I just pulled on that thread a little bit and just followed it, and took it one step at a time.
This is the Lawyer to Leader podcast for lawyers who've mastered the law and are ready to master the rest. I'm your host, Jonathan Cullen. Today, honestly, is a special episode. It's not just because I'm joined by one of my oldest friends, Chris Ito. It's because this was such an awesome conversation. Chris has such an intentional approach to his life, and he made career moves with incredible courage. And there's an Elon Musk story in there. You don't want to miss this. Two things before we dive in. If you enjoy the show, follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. It helps us reach more lawyers who need this. And if you're ready to make the shift from technical advisor to trusted leader, head to jonathancullencoaching.com and grab your free Lawyer to Leader assessment. Now let's get into it. All right. Okay, so our guest today is my good friend, Chris Ito. Perfect example of someone who made a brave career decision, and we'll dive into that, and has a great life story to tell, and I'm so excited to have him on. A little bit of background: Chris has an incredibly diverse background and a crazy work trajectory. PhD in electrical and computer engineering. He began his career in tech in California, eventually ending up at Google, Facebook. In 2021, he made a huge career pivot, followed his passion. He completed his education at the Culinary Institute of America in Napa, and the next year he left tech to become a chef. And he also became the president of Hope's Corner, a nonprofit that provides free meals and access to shower and laundry facilities to those in need in the Mountain View, California area. And in 2024, Chris returned to his native Canada and became a food recovery chef at A Better Life Foundation in Vancouver, British Columbia. The foundation receives unwanted but still good food from grocery stores and turns it into nutritious, delicious meals for those in need in Vancouver's downtown east side. It has, and I love this statistic, it has recovered more than 30 tons of unwanted food, producing about 300 meals a day for low-income folks in need. And despite all these amazing accomplishments, Chris's biggest success, of course, is he once beat me in a hockey face-off. So full disclosure, Chris and I are very good old friends, and we'll get into that. But welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, John. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And we talked about it a little bit before, but the why, why did I desperately want to have Chris on the podcast and to speak to the people that will listen to this? I think, Chris, you have a rare combination of, I always thought you were the smartest guy in the room. We were great friends, and you were always like very athletic. I thought you had it all together, and I was never surprised as we were friends in elementary school and how we drifted apart, but not as friends, but more in distance. And I would sort of see what you were up to, and I was never surprised at all of your accomplishments and all those things. And then one day we chatted, and you told me about your career shift, and it wasn't the shift itself that got to me, although that was like 100 on 100. It was like your thought process, and that was several years ago, and it never left my mind. It really resonated with me. And in the legal profession, I have not met a single person that at some point isn't questioning where they are, how they got there, what they're going to do. And I just thought your thought process, how you connected it to your values, to your family, it's going to be so valuable to people. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, once again, pleasure. Thank you for that introduction and your kind words. Funny you say a lot of those things. That's how I'd describe you. So, um,
Ah,
as
awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
as you said,
Awesome.
we sort of have known each other since preteen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, despite the distance, I've also followed your trajectory, and you've been a huge inspiration to me. Not only your career, that's sort of a side note, but as a person, family man, and your values, you're hugely inspiring. So great to reconnect for one, and
Yeah.
happy to talk to you here on this one.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad you didn't mention anything about you beating me in face-offs because I'm sure that happened several times as well. Yeah, so Chris and I met in I don't remember what grade, but in elementary school. I joined a new school when I moved to Oakville, Ontario, and Chris was one of my early friends that welcomed me there, and we played it. We just talked about it now, every sport imaginable together, and grew up in that space. So maybe I'll start with I did. It's kind of funny. Like in preparation for this, like I know you quite well, but I also thought let me just see what I find out. If you sort of Google someone, and there are some really nice pieces online that I thoroughly enjoyed sort of reading that helped me get some milestones along the way. And so I'm going to dive into that a little bit. So the first piece will be a bit about like escaping your prescribed plan, which I think does speak to people. So I saw that you mentioned, growing up, you felt like you were on the rails, like to a prescribed career plan. First, you were expected to be a doctor, then turning into engineering, the PhD, and very cool roles at Google, Facebook. I think that speaks to a lot of lawyers that experience this exact same pressure to follow like a rigid, prestigious track. How did you like deal with that? How did you realize you're sort of spending your life climbing a ladder, and that phrase, leaning against the wrong building? What would be your thoughts on that? How did you think that through?
Well, yeah, certainly my path hasn't been a linear one. It's been an interesting path. Definitely not one I would have predicted even 5 years ago.
Mm-mm.
So it's really a step by step situation. And I'm trying to think about how far I could go back, but even to the point of being on the track of going into medicine, I went into university um, thinking I was a smart guy, sort of top marks in high school, like a lot of folks going in. And after my first calculus exam, I got a C. And I was like, wow,
Mm.
I'm not as smart
Mm.
as I thought I was, or I couldn't really sail through it as easily. And I started thinking, well, I started second guessing myself. I was like, well,
Mm.
if I can't get into medicine, what am I going to do? And so I took engineering actually as a backup in case I couldn't get into medicine. So I became an engineering major in my second year. Took a whole bunch of pre-med classes along the way. Somehow managed to get a med school interview. I got one med school interview as an engineering student. Um, and and I got to tell you, it was the worst interview of my life. Like the biggest moment of your life, and it was just the worst interview. I was the last person of the day. 400 people in there were staring at the seat.
400
Yeah, people
people.
for like 100 positions. At first, it was 3,000 people
Oh
applied.
my
Got down
God.
to 400. You interview 100 people they select. I remember being in the room. People were, staring at the ceiling, staring at their watch, and I was like, "Holy cow, this is not going well." Um, and I knew before I left the room that that path wasn't going to
Mm.
happen for me. And I officially found out a few months later when I walked into the admissions office, having to be McMaster, same university. And they told me, and I said, okay, that's not too much of a surprise. And again, having a backup plan, I was applying to a bunch of engineering grad schools. And same kind of story. Like I was applying to these big schools and, Harvard, MIT, etc. Got rejected from all of them, but I hadn't heard back from Stanford yet. And I was like, I wasn't really holding out hope. Same day I got rejected from med school, I go back to my computer and I open my email, and there's an email from the administration office offering me admissions, and I
Mm.
was off to California from there. And so,
Mm.
I had a plan. I started making these backups, and then light started opening up doors. Um, growing up in Oakville, relatively small town at that time, going off to school in California wasn't something a lot of people did. But that door opened, and as scary as it was, I just walked through it, and uh,
Hmm.
and that's sort of the way I navigated my life. When opportunities came up, if it was something in a direction I wanted to go or something that piqued my curiosity, I just pulled on that thread a little bit and just followed it, and took it one step at a time. And so going to California, I'll sort of fast forward this a little bit. I ended up coming back to California, or back to Canada, finishing my PhD there, and then coming full circle to go back to California to work in Silicon Valley. But that decision to go to California in the first place, to go to Stanford for my master's, really paved the way for the rest of the path. Because
Right.
from there, I was able to go, as you said in your bio, I worked at Google and I worked at Facebook, these big engineering companies. A lot of fun stories associated with those. Maybe we'll dig into them. Um, but it was just sort of one step at a time, you know. Something made me curious. I would just go in that direction. And if it meant, I had spent a lot of time in one thing, that was okay. I felt like that time was never wasted. A lot of people say you could always go back. I'm sure you heard that yourself
Hmm. Hmm.
about your own decisions, right? And while that's kind of nice, um, it's in a way a little bit of a safety net, but I don't think about a safety net being below there. I think of walking on a high wire with no net below. Because if you kind of think about having a safety net there, you're not really fully committing yourself. And if you're not fully committing, you're not giving yourself the best opportunity. So every time I made a change, I just didn't look back. Med school was in the rearview mirror. Um, then I became an engineer. Then I decided to go to culinary school. Engineering was in the rearview mirror. They weren't bad experiences. In fact, everything I did, and then I went into a new thing. Even though that new thing was completely new and fresh, I came to it with all of this experience. To your
Hmm.
point at the very beginning, even though I don't come from the legal profession, you have experience that you can apply into a new field. And in fact, I think that's when the most interesting things happen, is because you're bringing a new point of view as opposed to everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I've lived my life, and I continue to live it. It's just, there's something interesting as well about doing it differently and bringing different perspectives. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, so it's sort
Do
of just
you
been a long
because
wayfinding
I
path.
can relate. Yeah, and I can relate to something you said there about like pulling on threads, and if I were to dive into that a little bit, one of my weaknesses is, and it's like your strength become your weakness. I might deep dive on too many things, like, oh, that's interesting, I'll go that way. And it is a strength because you get like multiple points of view and of interest. You can also sort of like get bogged down. How did you balance sort of like interests and focus?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, for one, the direction that I went, and when there was some interest or curiosity, I tended to follow my instinct on it, right? You just kind of follow your gut. Um, and I would just keep following that until that interest sort of started to subside. And
Hmm.
there was some sort of signal like, okay, I've taken that path as far as I could go. Maybe it's time to walk on a new path. So
Hmm.
I often like
Hmm.
I often like this path analogy, just the literal physical paths that you can walk. Sometimes you walk a path and you just reach the end of it, or you reach a fork and you just need to turn to another side. So while you're on that path, you're as focused as you can be. When I'm with you right
Hmm.
now, I'm trying to be here as much as I can, be as present as I can, and not think about anything else. Um, at the end of this call, or at the end of that physical path, it's just time to move on to the next thing. Um,
Hmm.
Nothing's meant
Hmm.
to last forever, and interests
Hmm.
change. Some people can last in a single focus thing for their whole lives, and there's something that I admire about that level of mastery.
Hmm.
But imagine you're a high school student. Benjamin's in high school right now. He's picking his electives and he's trying to figure out what to do in university. How are you supposed to know what you're going to do and focus on for your whole life
Hmm.
as a teenager, let alone in your 40s or 50s? And who's to say you
Yeah.
and who's to say you have to do it your whole life, or you can't go left, and then keep going left, or maybe make a U-turn, go back right.
Mm.
So I think not being too, invested in something in the best sense of saying, hey, this is great right now. I'm going to enjoy it for as long and as much as I can. And when it's run its course and it feels like it's time for change, maybe listen to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Tell me about the time in Silicon Valley. How did that impact you? What did you like, not like?
Yeah, so that time, it was such an interesting period because I moved there in 2010, and it was a real high point for the tech industry. A lot of things were booming. Google had just gone through an IPO.
Hmm.
Elon Musk wasn't crazy yet, but he was doing some really interesting. He was doing some really interesting things with Tesla and SpaceX. Um, and when I went there, I joined this sort of small, medium-sized engineering firm. I was in the industry, fiber optic telecommunications, and so you could kind of think of Nortel type of equivalent, old Nortel, I guess,
Hmm.
from Canada, um, and uh, and those always just kind of seemed like my options. So there was just like a small niche industry for me to be in, and it was like, okay, well, I'm here. There's not a lot of companies doing this, not a lot of companies doing it really in the world. But then Google started investing in fiber optic tech, and Facebook did. Um, and they started doing really interesting things like satellite communications with optics. And so my world started
Hmm.
opening up. And so again, going back to being in California as a master's student, it made the path a little bit easier to go there, to come back to work. And so when an opportunity opened up at Google, I applied, and I didn't get it. But I applied again when
uh,
another role came up, and I didn't get that either. And so
uh,
I think it was maybe my third or fourth time, and maybe the fourth time, somebody
yeah.
reached out to me and they said, hey, your background's kind of interesting. We've got this secret project at Google. I think I can talk about it now. This is 2014, and they don't do it anymore. But they brought me aboard to work on this satellite communication network. So they're building this
Oh, wow.
satellite network. Their goal was to launch 800 satellites in space, and that was going to provide the world with connectivity. And so I was on the optics team, and I was developing the inter-satellite laser communication system.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm trying to mentally remember what I was doing that year. It
yeah.
was not that. You just described like an Austin Powers movie.
Yeah, totally. Well, it actually even gets more wild because so I was there. This is 2014. Benjamin, my son, he was 5 years old. Charlotte was 3. So I had little kids, and I'm working at Google. And, I want to kind of make my mark there, do well, right? 4 months in, they kind of bring us all together to say, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, they they want to pull the plug on this.
Hmm.
Like, this is going to cost too much money. It's going to take, you know, 3 times as long to launch as planned. And so they end up pulling the plug. So a few months in, I'm all excited. I'm joining this new company. I'm
Hmm.
out of a job. But
Hmm.
that same day, the person who brought the idea to Google, he sort of had rights over what's called the spectrum, right? The ability to control a channel for up and down links. This guy named Greg Weiler, and he invited a bunch of us to his house in Atherton, California. So if you or any of your listeners have ever been to California, it's sort of this suburb of Palo Alto, which is pretty much like one of the wealthiest places in America. So,
Hmm.
I've got this map, and I'm driving to his place, and these mansions like bigger than I've ever seen, really. I get to this address, and this gate opens up. Start driving down there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that place is massive. And then I turn to the right, and I realize I'm looking at the pool house. And he has like the place that he lives has like an indoor basketball court. It's like, it's all these things you read about. Then it's true. Like
Hmm.
there are these wildly rich people that have these elaborate places. And so he invites us there because he wants to roll it out into a startup. And he
Hmm.
says, well, I have this partner that I'm going to bring along. Why don't you stick around? He's going to be here a little bit later. I'm looking at my watch. It's getting late. I've got these little kids I got to get home to. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this guy 5 more minutes, or I'm out of here. And then look, as you said, like in a movie, this guy kind of walks through this arch area. He's in the shadow and he kind of comes out. He's like, I can see it's kind of an imposing figure. And it's Elon Musk.
Mm,
So
mm.
Elon Musk walks in, and then Elon Musk is his partner. And so they have this idea that they're going to take over this project, launch all these satellites into space. Um,
Okay.
right. And so long story short, they have a falling out, and that project is what turned into Starlink for
Yeah.
SpaceX. So I was part of that original team, and had the opportunity to actually join that. And so you asked the question like a little bit earlier, how do you decide to either dive deep into something or,
Yeah.
when to make a turn? And that was one of those moments, right? Like there was an opportunity to dive even deeper, which is to join this exciting startup. Work with Elon was kind of a hot shot in Silicon Valley at that time, relatively new. Like you had Tesla was getting successful, you had SpaceX,
Hmm.
and I was going to be part of this exciting thing. We were going to move down to Hawthorne. I was going to work at SpaceX, and I had to like just kind of like literally step back and be like, "Wow, is this really aligned with what I want to do? Not only my career, but my life,
Mm.
right?" That would have totally changed the trajectory. Of course, Jenny, my wife Jenny, was part of the conversation. Your partner always has to be. Um, but she was super supportive. She was like, we have our life here
Mm.
and we have everything, but if this is your dream, let's do it. I'm in. And sometimes you kind of look for your partner for support, but then other times, like a partner or a friend, sometimes you're sort of looking for them to give you an excuse. Like if she said, no, we got a life
Yeah.
here, our kids are little, I'd be like, oh yeah, I would have done that if you were supportive, or I gotta, but I was like, oh darn, okay, now the decision is on me. Um, but it was just again one of those turning points where you like, okay, you could go left, and some people I worked with did, but I just decided, it didn't really align with um, what I want to do with my family. I knew enough about Elon
Mm.
that time. It was like that was going to be my life. I would live
Yeah.
basically in SpaceX, and like you and I'm sure a lot of the people listening, family life's important too. And
Mm.
I know it's not always easy to balance that. And, work-life balance doesn't necessarily mean on a daily basis. There could be different seasons, but it has to be part of it. Um, Not the balance part, but the parts that you value the most. And to me, there was nothing more important than my family and being with them. And, you know, nothing as shiny as that offer was going to pull me
Mm.
away. It's difficult to do, but oftentimes I also find if it takes you a very long time to make a decision, it's probably because you're trying to convince yourself of something that you already know, right?
Mm.
And so if
Mm.
I was sitting on it and I was trying to convince myself to do it, and I did for a couple of weeks, you know, Greg Weiler would email me. He's like, "Hey, Chris, have you made a decision? I'm trying to form the team here." If it takes you that long, you already know.
Yeah.
You know in your gut,
Yeah.
and your head is just trying to convince you of what your heart already knows. So sometimes even looking at those pauses, I mean, like, hey, this is taking me a long time to decide. Maybe I really already know the answer, and I'm
Mm.
just too hesitant to do it. A lot of different examples of
Mm.
that, but I think that was a key one. And yeah, so I ended up staying at Google. Um, Even my road at Google was kind of twisting and turning. I started off there as an electrical engineer, ended up being product manager. Google Home sent me around the world. I was in factories in China and Vietnam, and got to see different parts of the world and how different people work, and um, the discrepancy between the two sides. Here we were coming, this fancy team from Google, and all these people were there working and sometimes living like in the factory and sleeping in tents and such. And
Mm.
so I saw all of that. And it was, just another opportunity to take a step back and be like, gosh, now I'm away from my family. We're spending all this time, we're making, literally millions of devices that are probably going to end up in the landfill in a couple of years. No shade on people who
Mm.
work on it, but I took a pause for a second. I was like, as sort of fun as this experience is, this just isn't for me. It's not how I want to spend my time.
Mm.
It's not worth being away from my family to do this. Um, So again, it just took another moment to step back and just take a look. Like sometimes you have to, figuratively step out of yourself to almost watch yourself in like you're in a movie and be like, hey, is this the hero that I want to follow?
Mm,
Um, and and to just decide, like, you know, there are all these people that I admire, those people I look up to, and I still do, and I find inspiration. But ultimately, and this is probably the my favorite line of a book. It's the first line in David Copperfield, which is, whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station shall be held by another person, these pages will show.
mm,
And
mm,
just constantly decide, be the hero of your own life. Do the
mm,
thing that makes you want to follow you, not like the
mm.
followers, like Instagram followers, all that, but you know what I mean. It's like, hey, I'm interested in what that guy's doing. I want to get some
Yeah.
more of that.
Yeah. Love that. Wow. I'm tempted to make the next 10 questions about Elon Musk, but I won't.
Yeah, we could talk about that later. Let's talk about that.
Before we continue, everything Chris and I are talking about today, especially in the space of like changing careers, big decisions, how do you think about that? The Lawyer to Leader assessment at jonathancullencoaching.com was built exactly for this kind of thinking. Free, 5 minutes in the show notes. Let's get back to it. Yeah. So post Google,
Mm.
what happens? Because now I'm desperate to get to your decision about moving into your phase as a chef,
Hmm.
but I'm also like learning so much more that decision did not come from nowhere, because you just gave me two decision points, many that you faced that same inner thought process. And I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I did not know those things. And that's now informing me a lot about how you shaped the pathway. But I don't want to skip the part on, what happened after Google, and how do you exit Silicon Valley and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So during my time at Google, um, you often have vendors, people who are trying to sell you your company thing, especially Google. They're going to buy, well, many things at, a very high price point. So you often get treated really well. And so one of my colleagues was sort of one of the decision makers, and somebody that was trying to sell him something invited him to like a 49er game, you know, and you know how these kind of meetings go. You're there, they kind of schmooze, and okay, they're going to pitch the sale. But he had an extra ticket. So he's like, hey, do you want to come to this 49ers game? Patriots are in town. Sure. Don't often get a chance to go to an NFL game. And this was in November. And I remember why for a reason. We were in the stadium, and it's this beautiful open stadium. And California, you can count on sunshine 364 days a year. This was the 365th. It was pouring. And I was like, we were just getting drenched. And so we had to take cover. And, you're kind of taking cover, you're not really watching the game. Thanksgiving was coming up, American Thanksgiving. And I asked my colleague, Gautam, I was like, just make conversation. What are you doing for Thanksgiving? They said, me and my family are going to go cook at this local organization called Hope's Corner. Um, we're going to go there. We're going to make Thanksgiving meal all together. I was like, oh, really? You and your kids? Um, and at the time, I had the young kids, as I mentioned, Benjamin was 6 years old. And I thought, oh, wow, maybe I could do something like that. I can volunteer, give back to the community, and also involve
Mm.
him. And so I signed up to volunteer. And so, one Saturday morning, he was like in his onesie pajamas, and I'm waking him up. I'm like, hey, buddy, we're gonna go cook for some people. And he's rubbing his little eyes like, what are we doing? And we ended up going to this corner, um, Hope and Mercy Street, hence the name Hope's Corner.
Mm.
And we show up there. We make this big meal. We serve, maybe 300 people came in from the streets, low income homeless people. And I saw Benjamin handing out eggs to people and just sitting with
Mm.
people and just kind of seeing them, just the same, like as a child would see, they're people,
Mm-hmm.
they're no different. And I was like, okay, we got to do this again next week. And we did it week after week after week. And after time, I was like, this is one of the best parts of my week. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it sort of planted a seed. I was like, well, how can I get more of that in my life? I'm working at Google. I can volunteer here, which I'm doing. And that's, sort of giving me an opportunity to do a piece of what I'm doing, but I wanted more of that. Um, and so even though I was, sort of doing well at Google, Google Home, I was sort of looking outside and I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I had to start moving in the direction of that feeling of what I got volunteering at Hope's Corner with Benjamin. I couldn't
Mm.
pinpoint it, but I needed to move towards that feeling. And an opportunity opened up at Facebook in their social impact group. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. It's a little different than the engineering I'm doing. It's not exactly in the charity space, but it's a tech company working to support charities. So I was like, okay, that's moving
Mm-hmm.
in a way that was me moving in the right direction. And so after I'd done that for a while, I found myself still, having that inkling to continue to move closer and closer into that nonprofit space, and specifically in food. And it wasn't only Hope's Corner. I found myself outside of work, reading chef memoirs, reading cookbooks,
Mm.
watching documentaries. And the reason I share these parts of it is that sometimes we do a lot of things outside of work that we're just interested in doing. It's not because somebody's telling us to read something or somebody's asking us
Mm-hmm.
to. It's just what we want. And the point is just pay attention to those things because they're
Mm-hmm.
actually signals telling you what resonates with you personally, like what your truth is. And then you just have to listen to them. Um, and they might not be big career shifts like I did, like you did, they could be little dips in the water. Like people have different ways of doing it. I happen to be kind of a cannonball type of guy. Uh, and so, ultimately, Jenny and I, we would go up to Napa, which is like 2 to 3 hours away from where we lived. We'd drive up there, spend the weekend. One weekend we were up there while I was at Facebook. I was like, do you mind if we do a tour of the Culinary Institute? Culinary Institute of America that was there. And she was like, "Yeah, that's cool. Let's go stop in." We stop in, sort of looking, and I was just in awe, like
Mm.
by the beauty of it. Everything about it just was just like, wow, this is. I need to get this. I don't know how, but I need to
Mm.
get this in my life. And I left, and Jenny and I got an Uber. We got to a couple wine tastings, and they were heading to another one. And I was like, maybe when the kids are graduated and they go to university, I think I'd like to go to culinary school just like as in my retirement. And she was like, well, why don't you just go now?
Mm.
And I was like, well, how am I going to go now? Like we've got, our kids are sort of preteen. We live 2 to 3 hours from here. I've got this job. You've got a good job. And like I was making excuses right from the get go. Like back to the earlier point, I was like, oh man, now she's like, oh, you can do it. I was like, oh my gosh, do I really have what it takes to go through with it, or am I all talk? And so I remember that summer it was, during COVID, we had rented this place in Santa Barbara. We were working remotely there down south, and it was in the month of July. So the application deadline was the end of July. And I had it open, I logged
Mm.
in, I created my account, and I was like, am I really going to do this? And so because I didn't want any more of these like hard choices, I was like, no, I'm not going to apply. Forget it. Maybe next year. We can always say that. Maybe next year. The goalposts can always move. So July 31st passes. We're into August. I get this email because I signed in. I created an account. They're like, we have a couple places left.
Mm.
There's time to apply. I was like, oh, okay, universe. You're not giving me an easy way out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so, I just opened that email. I wrote my essay in like 10 minutes. It was so easy. Like, why do you want to come here? I talked about
Mm.
Hope's Corner. I talked about the desire to learn culinary skills so I can apply them um, in a space where they're not always applied. Oftentimes,
Mm.
for lack of a better term, soup kitchens have a lot of volunteers who are really well intentioned, but don't necessarily have the culinary skills. And I'm not just talking about the ability to produce a good meal, but the ability to be efficient in time and
Mm.
economically. So these are skills that chefs really have to develop, and the ability to use any ingredient and not waste it. Use it to its maximum potential. So these are all
Yeah.
the skills I wanted to use, and I wrote those in my essay. And you know what? At 44 years old, I was a student again, and I was a student with 24-year-olds,
Oh
um,
my God.
and I, I just saw myself like them. They probably saw this dad who was coming around, and not. But you know what? They were the nicest folks. I sat with them for lunch. Just that experience too. Like, how often do we hang out with people that much younger? It gave me another perspective, and I was
Yeah.
energized by it. To be able to go to school, be a beginner again, and it doesn't have to be in school, but to be a beginner again, that is just so
Mm.
invigorating, and it's liberating too. Like, yeah, we can talk about this if it makes sense for the interview, but you know, after culinary school, working in like my first job was in a Michelin Star restaurant. I'd never worked in a kitchen before, and then like talk about being a beginner.
Yeah.
I walk in
Yeah.
there and I'm like not only am I in a kitchen, but a Michelin Star kitchen, and
Yeah.
so
Were you terrified?
I was terrified. I was so stressed. I would call Jenny before service, like, Jenny, I don't think I can do this. I get crushed every night. I'm not ready. And she's like, it's okay. She would talk me down. She just like talk me down off the ledge. Um, and and it, I just went by this motto, which is like, going back to culinary school, when I was living out of my Airstream trailer, and that we could talk about that, but I was living on a farm, like on my trailer. And I had this post-it note on the door, that I could see when I woke up. It was not a big space, so you could really see everything. But it just said, show up today.
Mm.
And, it, you know, it, for your audience, and when people are thinking about these big decisions, and where they're going to go, it's so overwhelming. Even for me, it was overwhelming to think, hey, okay, I'm going to go to culinary school. What's the next 20 years going to look like? Gosh,
Yeah.
that's too much
Yeah.
to think about. um,
Yeah.
all I knew is I needed to show up today the best I could, in something I was really driven to do, and just trust that if I did that day after day, that doors would open, and I could just take the next step. Um, we talked about this offline last time. I shared that one of my favorite books is The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life. And one of my favorite quotes in that is, I don't know where I'm going, but I know exactly how to get there.
Mm. Mm. Love
And
that.
yeah, and you don't have to know. And how can you? Okay, who can say, looking back, maybe a few people, even 10 years down the road, where you'd be right at this moment? No.
Mm.
20 years? No. 30 years? Forget it. Who knows?
Mm.
But no direction. And the direction is what that gut feeling is. What are those things that you're drawn to? What's pointing you? What's pulling you somewhere? And that's just the North Star. You don't have to know the exact path. You just have to know and trust in yourself and the process. That's the I know.
Mm.
That's the part where it's I know exactly how I'm going to do it. It's because you trust yourself, and you just trust that if you do the best you can and you're doing what's in your heart, then you haven't made the wrong decision.
Hmm. So so much in that I'm picturing you a few phases separated, but we began talking about meeting Elon Musk in a mansion, and now you're in the trailer on a
Yep.
farm.
Yep.
Was there, and I know that the people listening to this, they're going to be professionals who are by definition like they've reached a certain level of financial success, and
Mhm.
they're feeling comfortable. They went from probably students who had nothing, worked hard in law school. They've achieved what they've achieved. They're probably worried about shaking that, structure. Was there a moment that you thought, what have I done? Or like, is this crazy? Or like,
Yeah,
what's going on?
moments, many. Yeah,
Moments.
yeah.
Continuous
Yeah,
moments.
yeah. I mean, like literally almost on a daily basis because something would happen because
Yeah.
you're already stepping off the prescribed path, right? That path that you've dug that trench on that's so comfortable that you could do it on autopilot. Now you're thrown into the fire, and it's like, okay,
Hmm.
now let's see, right? And oftentimes, when you're thinking about that moment, you know, what have I done? Or, there's some kind of obstacle. That just means you're challenging yourself. And, you know,
Yeah.
and if you take the mindset that, that obstacle is put in my path to show me how much I really want this. Do I
Hmm.
really want it? Or do I just want to talk about it? Because the talk part is the easy part. Then when you're in it, it's okay. Now you have to stay in it. You have to work through the hurt because it's going to hurt some days, right? It's
Hmm.
going way back. Not that it was called that often, but I'm not called Dr. Ito anymore. So, you know, in fact, somebody who might be 20 years younger than me is telling me what to do in a new setting, and rightfully so. They have much more
Yeah.
experience than me in the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're my new mentors.
Humbling. Very humbling.
Very humbling, very, very humbling.
Hmm.
But as I said, there's power in being a beginner again. Um,
Hmm. I
but
like
yeah,
that.
but yeah, to your question, just stay in it. You know, we talked about sports before, and I think sports can be a great teacher too. It's like oftentimes the person who wins is just the person who stays in the fight a little longer.
Hmm.
I think the hard part, going back to an earlier question, is knowing, is this the fight I still need to be in, or
Yeah.
do I need to be in another fight? And I don't think there's an easy answer to that. But that compass is that feeling inside. Not here. This is trying to keep you safe. And keeping you
Hmm.
safe is probably going to keep you in the position you're in. Because your mind's going to try to talk you out of it. I mean, that's, you know,
Hmm.
many, many years of evolution. That's that reptilian brain that's there for safety. It's not there
Hmm.
for pushing us for something great.
Hmm.
It's not there for saying, hey, I only have one life and I want to make it epic. That's here.
Hmm.
That's here.
Hmm.
So listen to that.
Hmm.
Sometimes when it doesn't make sense, did it make sense for me to give up my big salary and compensation at Facebook and become a student again and pay to do something and then take a massive pay cut? No, it does not make
Hmm.
sense on paper. Um, and then, you know, but I knew the thing I did know was that I would regret it at some point if I never took that chance. And to
Yeah.
me, to
Yeah.
me, that would have been more painful than the
Hmm.
quote unquote pain of leaving a salary. Can everybody do it at any stage? No, it depends on your personal situation, your personal comfort with your finances. But I would say it's really easy to move the goalposts all the time and just to be like, I'll do this next year and I'll do this next year.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so but that's just something every individual has to reconcile. The way I do it is, yeah, okay, I'll look at my finances if we talk about that one, and say, yeah, I feel like we're in a good place.
Hmm.
You can always pad it more, but do you want to just keep padding it, and not enjoying what you're doing? To me, that's more costly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and yeah, it's cliche, but we're never as young as we are right in this moment. And so, if you
Mm.
think you're going to have more energy um, later, not likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember calling you. I had a conversation with you while I was walking my dog. I distinctly remember because we talked for so long that I had to confusingly
Yeah.
for the dog do several turns around a
Dog was
very
happy.
broad neighborhood. Dog was loving it, never going out at night and all that. And it was because the moment I caught you in was you'd gone through school, you were headed the culinary school, and you were headed to this new job that you just described. So that was the moment I had you in. And from then on, it's funny that you say people don't call you Dr. Ito because it depends on when you meet and know someone.
Hmm.
My son knows you as Chef
Yeah,
Chris,
yeah,
right? Like,
right,
which is the
right.
cool part. So
Yeah,
I'll say Chef Chris doing X, Y, Z. So then, some time goes past, and then the next call we have, you're on your way back to Canada, in your trailer, and
hmm,
you've got so many other stories for me. So where did you go, and where did you end up?
yeah. And by the way, before picking up on that question, if you, in case you didn't pick up on it, when you said Tristan refers to me as Chef Chris, I had a big smile on my face. Not only because I love Tristan, he's such a beautiful boy, but that's also something to pay attention to. Like
Mm,
when somebody calls me chef at work, I feel good about that.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
makes me feel
yeah.
good. When somebody called me Dr. Ito, it's nothing. When somebody used to ask me, what's your job? I said, "Oh, I'm program manager at Facebook." Like even how I say it right
Mm,
there. So
mm,
there's signals in the way that you talk about something,
yeah,
also to
yeah,
pay attention to. Uh, but
yeah.
anyway, to your question, yeah. So we're in California. I'm working at the restaurant, so part time. I'm president of Hope's Corner part time. Jenny's doing her thing. She's doing really great. She's working at Roblox. Kids are thriving. We have a house. Hey, life is perfect, right? Um, but uh, we both had the same feeling. We looked at each other one day, after dinner, having a glass of wine, and we just said, "Hey, are we going to live in California our whole lives?
Mm.
What are we going to do when the kids go out of school?" I was like, "It's a good question. It's funny that you asked me. I've been thinking about it around the same time too, and yeah, and there was nothing wrong. I'm not leading this to a point where there's anything wrong about the U.S. and California. And I know there can be some negative sentiments, but it gave us nothing but opportunity, and I have nothing but gratitude for my time there and the people. Most importantly, people at Hope's Corner changed my life. Um, but we thought, hey, well, our parents aren't getting any younger. We're not getting any younger. Um, Kids have grown up in California. Wouldn't it be cool if they could grow up a bit in Canada? And we chose that as our next adventure. And so I'm out here in Vancouver right now. We were in California. Everything's on the West Coast. No shade to people on the East. I love East Coast. But we just decided we were West Coast people. And we're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, where can we go out West? And Jenny's best friend lives up here in Lynn Valley in North Vancouver, where, I can look out my window and I see the mountains, which I
Mm-hmm.
love. And,
Mm-hmm.
we can drive to Whistler, and the waters right here is just spectacular part of the country. And I'm slowly becoming a Canucks fan, although this year didn't help. Uh, but so we said, well, what if we move to Vancouver? Could we make that happen? And and it was really interesting what the hardest parts of that were. And again, I think these are signals. Like, what's the hardest part of something? And that's probably telling me something. And the hardest part, I was in a board meeting, President of Hope's Corner. I'm running the board meeting, and I knew at some point I had to tell them I'm going to be leaving.
Mm.
And I got to tell you, I could barely get through that. I was just so choked
Mm.
up. I said, I'm getting a little emotional. I'm right there in my mind. Um, that experience changed the trajectory of my life. And not just the
Mm-hmm.
experience, but the people. Like I saw how
Mm-hmm.
dedicated people were to helping others and doing that in service. To me, it just felt like where I wanted to be. And leaving that community, I worried that I wouldn't be able to find that same community. And I had
Right.
that, kind of regret of being like, okay, is this really the right thing? I don't want to leave this behind. You might leave a job and be like, okay, peace out, guys. Good riddance.
Right.
But leaving something where you're just like, oh, then
Mm.
that means something. Um, so yeah, I mean, ultimately we just said, we were sort of getting into the summer months, and Benjamin was going into eighth grade, and eighth grade is where high school starts here in Canada. And we said, okay, well, if we don't find something in the next couple of weeks, and we've been looking, for a place up here, we're not going to move because we didn't want to kind of take Benjamin out or get him into high school in the middle of it. And there's going to be enough of a change for the kids and all that. And this was on a Friday. Jenny had just got a promotion, and so we were celebrating it. And I was like, Jenny, I don't think this is gonna happen. And wouldn't you know it, that house that we had been waiting for came up on Sunday. And we were set to go. It was a kid's spring break. We are going to go to New Zealand the following Friday. We're flying out, and this house came up on the market Sunday. And so we had a realtor here we connected with. They gave us a video tour and told us, well, you can put an offer in, and you can kind of back out after 3 days or whatever if it doesn't work out with financing or anything. So we said, okay, well, this is a way to kind of like, walk the walk. It's like, we're going to put an offer on this place. Okay. Like, so that's another thing, right? When you make a decision, the hardest part is like trying to make the decision. But once you make it, you're like, okay, things are in motion. This is happening. Like, we already had the meeting. We already know we're going.
Yeah.
We don't have to go back there. So now let's move forward. So we put this offer on the house. Tuesday comes along. I'm at work. And when I'm at work and I'm cooking, I'm just there. Like, 5 hours cooking. I can't look at my phone. I can't answer. My phone's buzzing in my pocket like all night. I'm like, I cannot look at it. End of the night, I finally look at it. It's like 23 messages. My realtor, Jenny's calling me. She's like, they were like so close to closing the deal, but we had this deadline at 10 p.m. It was like 9:34 in the kitchen. I step out in the parking lot and I call Jenny. I'm like, okay, this is like the Rubicon right now. Like, do you want this? And are we going to take the leap? I'm like, and if we take the leap, we're all in. And she's like, I really want to do this. And so I called a realtor and I said, okay, let's buy the place. And so I don't know if I'd recommend this path because there are three things that had to happen. One, we had to find a place. Two, we had to sell the place we currently have, which we hadn't even listed.
Yeah.
And three, Jenny had to get remote work approval. Because I know, being a chef now, you can't do that remotely, obviously. But that set things in motion, right? And, I'm a firm believer, when you put your intention out there, the universe conspires to try to make things happen. It's like one of my favorite lines from The Alchemist. And when it, within, a few weeks' time, we listed the house, we sold it. Jenny got remote work approval, and within a month, we had packed up the Airstream and we're towing it up the Pacific Coast Highway en route to Canada.
Wow. Quite another milestone and decision process. So how did you end up at the foundation?
Yeah. So we've been actually thinking about this move since 2019. So we made the move in 2023. A long time thinking about it. Obviously, COVID delayed it. In fact, actually spurred it in some senses. There's a little bit of a sense of urgency. We couldn't get back to see our parents, and that worried us a little bit. Both sets of parents being in Canada, and it actually opened up the opportunity for remote work. So in a strange way, obviously it's a very tragic time for a lot of people. And some small silver lining was it actually opened up that opportunity for us to move north. But yeah, so we're in 2019. We were, Jenny and I were sort of talking about it. I was at Facebook at the time. And so I started looking at LinkedIn what kind of organizations are sort of like Hope's Corner in Vancouver. And I found this one called the Better Life Foundation. And in 3 days, they were having this sort of fundraising dinner in their dining space. So it runs out of a building called Save on Meats. If anybody's been to downtown Vancouver, it's an iconic building, kind of hard to miss on Hastings Street. It used to be like a 50s style diner, but Better Life Foundation took it over and turned it into a community kitchen. And so they still use the dining space for events. In fact, I'm running one today. And they were having one in a few days. And I was like, oh man, I would love to attend that and meet the people there. Cause like if we move, that seems like a great place to go. And I was like, it's in Vancouver and it's like in 3 days and I'm working. And Jane's like, so what? Just buy a ticket and go. Again, like
she seems to be behind all of this.
She's behind it all. She's honestly none of this would happen without her. I owe her a ton of credit, a lot of gratitude. But yeah, she gave me that push I needed. And Facebook had a remote office there, which was walking distance from the place. So I bought a ticket. I flew out. I worked from that remote office. And then at night, I walked over to the Save on Meats building where a Better Life Foundation was. And I remember going into the space, and it was just like this warm, welcoming atmosphere where it was sort of like a mix of people who look like professionals, people maybe low income, maybe even street entrenched folks. And it was just like this group of individuals where you just normally wouldn't see this kind of thing coming together. And everybody, sat down, and these chefs were bringing out plates of delicious food. They had these sort of guest celebrity chefs come in. And at one point in the night, the founder, Mark Brand, came out, and he just sort of like he spoke, and it was like he was speaking like right into my heart.
Mm.
I just felt viscerally like I'd never felt before. Like I need to be doing this. Like I don't know what
Mm.
this exactly is, but this is it. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and honestly, it wasn't like, no, I have to be here doing it. I just need this. I need to create this in my life, whether it's joining a community that exists like this or creating one myself. But when he spoke, and the the amount of love and community in that space was just like a wave that came over me. Um, and it was just undeniable. Sometimes when those things happen, and I feel blessed that it did, not always fortunate to have sort of a lightning bolt like that.
Yeah.
I just said to myself, I don't know how, but I'm going to be doing this. And the timing was just so incredible in the sense that it was December 2019. And then, of course, we all know what happened a few months later when COVID came about and things started shutting down, and so it really delayed the process quite a bit. But again, in a way, it opened the doors for remote work and the opportunity to go back there. So when we finally did move back, 2023, this is now fast forward 4 years. COVID had shuttered them significantly.
Mm-hmm.
They had one other event, and then I saw another one was coming up when I was living in Vancouver, and I emailed them and I said, hey, listen, I'd love to volunteer. I have some culinary experience. I could help out in the kitchen. Adriana, community manager, was kind of intrigued by my background. And
Mm-hmm.
she was like, yeah, why don't you come out? And so, in that 5 year gap, I'd only missed one event. And now I was not a guest sitting in the dining room. I was working in the kitchen. And I loved it more than I even expected. And so, just that next day, I emailed head chef Ian, executive director Ash McLeod, and I said, "Hey guys, I know you might not have openings, and I know things are lean at a nonprofit, but if you ever do, I'm here, and I'd love to work with you."
Mm-hmm.
And they emailed me back and said, "You know what? We got something opening up at the end of the month that I think will be perfect for you." And yeah, the rest is history, so to speak. And so those events that I first sat down for, and I was a guest and then a volunteer, now I'm running them. And
Wow.
and
Wow.
so
Wow.
yeah, I had an event last night. Um, we bring in a group of folks. They cook the meal, and I'm sort of leading the back of house, the kitchen team. And then a really nice tradition at the end of the night, we all sort of gather around in the dining room, and people reflect on their experience in the night. And no matter what I have going on, like no matter how busy I am or what I have to do later, I don't care if I have to stay to midnight when I am. I always participate in that because it's really transformative, like not only for the people who
Mm.
participate in it, but for me too. And just
Mm-hmm.
to hear the stories of, when you have another person there sitting across from you that maybe just grew up in a different circumstance, maybe made one or two bad decisions, but they're just another human being that's in need of nourishment, whether that's a plate of food or just somebody to look at them and say hi and just recognize another human being sitting across from you. At the beginning of the night, we're always strangers, and at the end of the night, we're always hugging.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
how many jobs can you have that you do that? So
Mm.
to me, it's just like an honor and a privilege to be able to do it. Um, I feel like I've been given so much in my life. I can't imagine having a better life. Like I'm so grateful for everything I have, for friendships like yours, for opportunities. Uh, not a way that makes me forced to do it, but my mindset is I owe for all I have, and
Hmm.
my, now it's my time to give back, and so this is
Hmm.
my time to be of service. Um, I feel like service is a huge component. I think we're all in service in some way. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit. You don't have to be feeding the homeless. Um, it's giving your gifts to the world, just like you're doing with this podcast and with the work you're
Hmm.
doing and the experience you have and the people you're going to be helping. You're in service. It's one of the things that I think we all need in our lives. I think it gives us great satisfaction, great fulfillment to help another person in any capacity we can with the gifts that we have. Um, and when you're a master in your field, like you are, John, and like a lot of people are in your field, that there's something about that overlap of service and mastery um, that creates something really special. And I think
Hmm.
whenever you can do that and you can overlap that, you can complete that Venn diagram with something you're really passionate about, that's where real magic happens. And so,
Hmm.
I feel like I found that. I feel super fortunate to do it. For your audience, if you haven't found it, keep looking, keep listening to those signals. The universe is talking to you. You just have to listen.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's there for you.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. I love that. All right. I'm going to end with a couple of rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
Whew, I'm still recovering from, from that. That was awesome, Chris. I just before I get to that, like I had read a small tidbit that in some of the stuff I read online that you'd been, quoted as doing, and one you could correct me if it's not the right quote, but it struck me and it seems in line with what you said that you had recovered from a life that wasn't aligned with your values, and that really spoke to me. And now that I've heard, so much more detail today about your story, um, and I think even you said it too. I think people think it's a sometimes when they think about career changes, they think they've either got to go all make a huge change or they got to stay stuck in what they're doing. And can you connect that thought on recovering from the life that wasn't aligned with your values? How can people change their current professional lives, even if it doesn't necessarily mean diving in and the multiple dramatic changes you just described, but what would you say to people who are currently feeling stuck and are not ready to make a dramatic change?
Yeah, it's a great question. And in fact, it's one of the questions, right? I think we've all asked ourselves that at one point or another. Uh, how can you do it? To your point, it doesn't have to be binary, right? You don't have to stay where you are or make this drastic change. That's too overwhelming. That's too much to put on yourself. It's too much pressure. I know we're all high achievers and we drive under pressure, but don't put that pressure on yourself. You don't need to. Um, the thing you need to do is to pay attention to the signals in your life. And that can be internal, what your body's telling you. I like to say the body keeps score, it never lies. So if your body is telling you, and that can be in many different signals, that, okay, something is a little out of alignment for me right now. And sometimes, the pain of um, your current circumstances, has to kind of be surpassed by, the fear of doing something different. It's sort of when that threshold crosses that you're like, okay, my current situation is too painful. Hopefully you don't get there. I really hope a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
don't get there because, yeah, you don't want to get to that point. Sometimes it starts as a whisper, but it ultimately, I think, ends with, a pile of bricks. But yeah, just try to listen to that whisper. And to the point of where we were starting the conversation, it doesn't necessarily have to be signals that are coming from your field. It can be just
Hmm.
signals in your life that you're drawn to. And it's like, just stay curious about that. Like, what is it about that I like? You might not have to figure it out cognitively, but just move towards that and try getting more of that in your life. Things that you like more, but also what are the types of books you read? What movies do you watch?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you follow?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you admire? And then try to connect those dots too. Again, you don't have to figure it out exactly, but there's something there that's telling you something. And, just continue to pull on that thread. It can be a volunteer opportunity. It could be taking a
Mm-hmm.
class. You can dip your toe in the water and say, hey, I'm kind of curious about this. Let me see what it's really like. Like for me, so I would go to culinary school. What's the worst that happens? I finish and I'm out of the workforce for a year. I can get another job.
Mm-hmm.
I can come back. Um, there's always an opportunity to go back if you want to. You can always turn around. But I will have to say, if you've started moving in one direction, you're probably not going to want to turn around and go back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Once you start moving and walking in a direction, as I've shared a couple different stories, the universe, I believe, opens up pathways for you. So just take that first step. You know, Again, it doesn't have to be that first step in necessarily a career move, um, but moving in that direction, I think, can be really powerful. And it just gives you another signal. It's just like, okay, I'm going to take this step. Let me see how this goes. And then I'm going to take another one. You just
Mm-hmm.
look at the step that's right in front of you. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that's a simple way of saying it, but not easy. It's
Mm-hmm.
simple, but not
Mm-hmm.
easy. I know, guys,
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy. And if you ever want to talk about it, uh, we certainly can, because I've been there
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's not harder. But if I will say this, the hardest part is actually deciding. Once you
Yeah.
decide and
Yeah.
you're in it and you're committed. And yeah, to your question earlier, John, do you ever ask yourself, hey, what did I just do? Um, you might ask yourself that, but that's okay. You could
Yeah.
also be asking yourself, if you don't do anything, "Ah, why am I still doing this?" And
Yeah.
maybe just ask yourself, which would I rather be? Um, there's nothing that's fixed. There's always an opportunity to change. There's always a chance to say, hey, this is for me. I'm going to keep going, or hey, it's not for me, and that's okay. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's uh, it's not a linear path. It certainly isn't.
Yeah.
But to me, that's part of the fun. That's the adventure.
Yeah.
That's the adventure. And
Yeah.
that's actually one of those
Yeah.
things that I really admire is when people take these sometimes leaps of faith. Sometimes they're, well calculated. There's quite a range also. But those are the interesting people. Those are the interesting
Mm-hmm.
lives. There's nothing wrong with doing the same thing if that's what you love. I mean, in a way, you found it. You have found that mastery path that you are dedicating your life to. And there is something I admire about that. I admire a lot of chefs that are just masters in their
Mm-hmm.
field, like people outside of that. But there's nothing to say that it has to always be like that. You can always begin again.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember too one thing, and you did help me a lot with unknowingly, probably helped me a lot with my career thinking, and of the many, many things you said that helped me along the way, and that resonates even more now. And I have shared with others to let you know that who have had a thought process is as a parent too, the impact of like your example to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you use the phrase, about showing your kids that you can always reinvent yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That was so powerful for me because I'm just like you. I'm a dedicated dad, and I thought about like what are my kids going to think about this change. And they only ever knew me as a lawyer who worked at Pfizer for their whole lives, which I realized when I was changing. I'm like, oh my God, you don't even know me as anything else.
Yeah.
And the funny part was when I told them, they were like, no problem, that I asked, are you worried about anything? And they're, my daughter, just Olivia, said, are you going to be home more? That was the only question. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, okay. And to your point about the universe and signals, and Sophie, my wife's going to love that. She's a big fan of that. That was a huge signal for me, that was her response to me. And Tristan was all in, like no problem, whatever you want to do. So that really spoke to me. And then hopefully will resonate for them for the rest of their lives. So
Yeah.
so
Well,
I definitely want to thank you for that because that was important to me.
100%. I mean, and if I could add on to the previous answer, you helped me think of it in another way, which is, those responses, like that your kids gave you, um, I think the part that sort of makes it illuminate the decision making process is that it shines a light on what your values are.
Yeah.
And if you're making a decision based on your values, again, you can't go wrong.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
If that decision is um, misaligned with your values, you're gonna feel some type of discomfort.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think it's important. Always check that, hey, is this change that I'm seeking aligned with my values? Because for me, a change could have been when I was in Silicon Valley, which was, I went from Google to Facebook. In a way, I just went from one hamster wheel to the other. Um, and I think there can be something sort of alluring and a little disorienting of having opportunities in front of you that are shiny and
Mm-hmm.
are bringing you in a different direction than you want to go. Money is definitely an easy one. Titles, prestige, what society believes is of value. But if you can sit with yourself and be like, I'm at peace with my decision, I'm
Mm-hmm.
at peace with myself, my family is happy I'm here, my friends are happy with me, and I'm happy with them. I mean, that's really what it's all about. Like, I think we're all
Mm-hmm.
seeking fulfillment and peace and just a sense of living a life of meaning and one that matters. At least I am, and I believe a lot of people are. And if the decision will bring you closer to that, I think it's the right one. Um,
Mm.
I, I I think we've all attended one of these expert type panels before, and this is kind of going back. I was a junior engineer at Infinera before I joined Google. I remember attending this sort of expert panel of people who are, in the highest positions in the organization. People so many levels down, they wouldn't even like bother to look down upon me. Um, and I don't remember anything from it but one question. And that question was the exact one that you asked, which is, if you have an opportunity to make a change, whether that's a new role in the company or a new job or anything, maybe even bigger, how do you decide what to do? And I kind of liked the answer that this senior fellow had provided. And he said his framework was he sort of had this idea of where the direction he wanted to go. And that might be aligned with his values or his career goals or
Mm-hmm.
anything of that sort, whatever you want to do as an individual. And he said, if something was an opportunity put in front of me and it was bringing me closer to that, and I'll interject this additional part, which we just talked about, and it aligned with my values, the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's hard, it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to make maybe some people unhappy. The answer's got to be yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. All right, I'm gonna ask you three rapid fires and just couple words each. Best advice you've ever gotten.
Oh, wow. Best advice I've ever gotten.
It's okay if it comes from me.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Um, I the thing that's just coming to the forefront is it's not too verbose. It's just purely follow your heart. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, because I think we all know a truth in us, um, and that's a very personal thing. And if you're just listening to that, then that's just again that's the right decision.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. All right, here's an easier one. When I say lawyer, you think.
I think do am I gonna need one?
Nice,
No,
nice,
I,
nice.
I
Oh,
mean,
I was thinking about your career path. You could have ended up where you are now. there is a branch of the universe where you were working for Doge under Elon Musk too, and I was like, maybe at some point there'd be an interjection of
Maybe. No, but that's sort of the tongue-in-cheek answer. Honestly, I think of you. You're, yeah, you're, one of my closest friends, and as a lawyer, and so I only have good thoughts about it because I got good thoughts about you.
Nice. I have done the profession well then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, and last one, and I'm so glad I get to ask this of you because I've gotten a lot from you in this area. You're a book you would recommend to this audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to always pick one, and it can be sometimes a little daunting if you recommend a long book to somebody, because then they're like, oh gosh, am I gonna have to read this? Somebody's gonna ask me about it.
That's me.
So this recommendation actually fits well in something that's very digestible, that has probably more wisdom per words than any other book I've read, and it's done in a really entertaining way. And I referenced it earlier in this conversation, and that's The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life by Boyd Varty. Just a very deep breather, super interesting guy in South Africa who makes a lot of really insightful observations about the connection of living a wild life and how that translates into everybody's life in terms of exactly what we've talked about today. It's not only the book I would recommend the most, I think it's probably the most relevant book to our conversation today. So I highly, highly recommend it. And then if you want to learn more about Boyd Varty, he's a master storyteller, a beautiful human being, and just, so wise. It's interesting because I gave that book recently to a person who was volunteering with us at a Better Life Foundation, and she got into med school, and she was deciding, oh, do I go to med school in Toronto or do I stay here and be with my family? And I said, there's a lot of different ways to look at that, but I think this book might have some answers for you as well.
Nice. And I did follow your recommendation and listened to him on a few different podcasts, and what an eye opener. So I really appreciate that. Yep. All right. So I'm going to say thank you, Chris. And I want to make sure to ask people to check out what you're doing and what the Better Life Foundation is doing at abetterlifefoundation.ca. And I'll put that in the show notes so people can find that. And thank you for being part of the podcast today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks, John, so much. It's fun talking to you. We can always talk offline, but this was kind of a fun format, and I hope we do talk again soon.
Wow. What do you say about that? I love that conversation. I learned so much. Just Chris's way of handling change, handling intentionality, being true to himself. I learned so much, and I've known him forever, but I love that conversation. Hope you liked it too. If you do, make sure to subscribe, follow, do what you got to do to meet more people like Chris. All right, being right, it's got you this far. Leading will get you further. Head to jonathancullencoaching.com. Grab your free lawyer to leader assessment. See you next time.